Raider Nation, what's good? Jesse Merrick here. Welcome to another episode of the Silver and Black Sports Network podcast. Now, for those of you guys that are watching, obviously you can tell I'm coming to you from a different location. I am not in the normal studios. I'm actually on the road in Chicago working on another project, but the show still goes on. We still cover the Raiders, even remotely. So, with that, let's dive into what we have slated for you guys on today's show. It's a good one. We've got Ted Nguyen from The Athletic jumping on to really break things down. You guys know that Ted is a football junkie. He breaks down the film, crunches the tape, and always comes away with some solid takeaways. So we lean on him to help us take a look a little bit deeper into this matchup with the Chiefs. Obviously, it heavily favors the Chiefs in this matchup, but man, he dives into what Patrick Mahomes has been doing well, whether or not Travis Kelce is still a threat, what Rashee Rice actually brings to the table in this matchup, and we explain where the Raiders can have an edge and what Geno Smith actually needs to do in this offense as a whole to be able to walk away with a win in there in Kansas City. I know it's not likely, but the Raiders really got to get this thing going. They've got some momentum after the game against the Titans. If they can figure it out a way to keep it close or get a win heading into the bye week, that is massive for them. So we dive into how they can go about doing that in this game against the Chiefs with Ted. It's a good time, and as always, in our Friday edition of the podcast, we're also chopping it up with our homie Matt Perrault to get into another round of Raiders Rounders. As always, he's got some of the best bets of the weekend as well. But first, let's get it rolling with our interview with Ted. All right, Ted, let's dive right into the matchup, man. Obviously, Raiders and Chiefs really favors the Chiefs. Let's be completely honest of where the Raiders are in this situation right now. But how do you wrap your head around this matchup and kind of what Patrick Mahomes has done the last handful of games? It seems like he's really turned a corner here.
Yeah, I think in the last couple of years, the Chiefs have been kind of just trying to find whatever answers they could offensively. They were very limited from a personnel standpoint. They had a lot of trouble with their tackles, and we saw that play out in the Super Bowl where they couldn't protect Patrick Mahomes. They didn't have a lot of weapons. Travis Kelce was aging. And now things have completely flipped for them. They figured out some things out on the offensive line. They moved their left tackle. They drafted a left tackle last year. They moved to left guard. That experiment's been going well. I don't want to say his name because I'm going to butcher it completely. But
you and me both.
I'm not going to attempt it. But they signed Jalen Moore, who was a swing tackle, to be a potential starter. And then they end up drafting Josh Simmons in the first round, and Josh Simmons looks like a star right off the bat. But Moore, who had to come in and play for Simmons in the game against Detroit, ended up looking great too. So they have a good young left tackle who's probably not going to play in this game based on what we know right now. He's dealing with some personal issues, but they have a great swing tackle, maybe the best swing tackle in the league, to just go in there and play, and he shut down Aiden Hutchinson, so he should be pretty good in this game. And as far as a weapon standpoint, they have guys that could go deep now. They have Hollywood Brown, they have Tyquan Thornton, who's pretty much relegated to the bench because they have Xavier Worthy back now, who runs a 4.2. So they have all this speed that could take the roof off of the defense, and now they're getting Rashee Rice back right in time for the Raiders. And Rashee Rice is just a yak monster. He's like a young Deebo Samuel that could also run downfield routes. So this guy is a wide receiver one, not in a traditional sense, like a guy that you just put out there and hope that he could win matchups on the outside. I mean, he could do some of that, but he's just like a guy that just fits exactly what the scheme needs. And the Raiders are going to have to tackle him because they're going to get the ball to him in open space and really kind of test out their Ferrari they just got back.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree 100%. He's kind of like the slant king. They're going to be looking to hit him over the middle for sure. Just offensively, mostly with the skill position players they have, lumping Travis Kelce into that as well, obviously. What has Andy Reid really been doing offensively for them in terms of picking defenses apart? How have they attacked a lot of the defenses they faced?
Well, they're an RPO-based team, which means they do a lot of run-pass option type of stuff, and they kind of mess with your run fits by switching how they run certain runs a little differently than how other teams will run it from shotgun. But in the game against Detroit, they actually ran the ball from under center more than they did at any point this season. And I feel like that fits Isaiah Pacheco's skill set a little bit better. And it also gives you another dimension you have to watch out for because if they could run the ball effectively, and I think they can do it from under center. It's just Andy Reid has been kind of reluctant to do that. Then you have to deal with the play action game from under center as well, and that just adds another dimension you have to worry about with this Chiefs offense.
No, definitely. And so, I mean, you said you liked this matchup for them with Pacheco. Do you think they're going to be able to run the ball on the Raiders' defense? That's been something they've really tried to hone in on and take the run away from teams lately.
Yeah, it's been a strength for the Raiders. They had one bad game against the Commanders, but the thing is, if they do go under center, they will have a pretty strong play action game coming off of it, and the Raiders do struggle against play action. So, I think they put on film that they were willing to run the ball from under center against Detroit. So, they might come out in this game and just run a bunch of play action from under center, and that's just, again, another element that you have to really worry about when you're facing this Chiefs offense that could beat you in so many different ways.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to take into account for them. I'm curious, obviously, look, like the cornerback matchup, like it 100% favors, the Chiefs receivers, given the talent they have in that room. And we've seen the Raiders corners struggle a bit here this season. What have they struggled the most with, and how do you think they try and correct that here against this Chiefs team? Like, how do you think they attack that group?
Yeah, I think they played a lot of cover three early on in the season. In this last game against the Tennessee Titans, they did try to switch things up and give Cam Ward a bunch of different looks. They played a little bit more cover two. So when you're playing cover three, you are playing a lot of off. So you're not really worried about getting beat deep too much because you're playing so far off the line of scrimmage. So it's not like these guys are getting burned deep, but when you're playing off, you have to be able to read routes. You have to know when to jump up and be aggressive. And a guy like Richard Sherman, who played in a scheme for so long, that's what he was so good at, was knowing when to take those chances and take the air out of the defense. And I think, Kaya Blue specifically just, he got burned underneath a lot, giving up so much space. And then he occasionally got beat deep too. So, I mean, it was just kind of, he was just playing poorly in all areas. He played better against the Tennessee Titans, but I mean, it did help that they lost Calvin Ridley and they don't have much receiving talent behind him. So we'll see how he fares against these Chiefs receivers that have a ton of speed. But to me, I think if he struggles in that first half, I think you got to put Darian Porter and see what he has to offer you on that side.
Yeah, I would agree 100%, just given, the measurables that he brings to the table and the fact that we have seen him get better from week to week, and you go and you watch him play, like he has played well in the snaps that he has gotten. I'm curious, and I don't think this is probably anything we would advise, but do you think we see them running more man looks like we saw in that game against the Titans? Again, I know they're not really worried about the Titans receivers. This is a much different group, but do you think Patrick Graham tries to roll the dice and bring some heat to Mahomes?
I think in certain situations, I mean, you were definitely able to do that against Mahomes in the last couple of years when they didn't have a lot of receiving talent. But I think now it's a lot tougher because, like, they were getting open a couple of years ago because they were seeing a lot of man coverage because teams just weren't afraid of their receivers. But they were getting open because Andy Reid was so good at scheming up different ways of creating picks and rubs and all those sorts of things. And now that they have legitimate speed at that position and they have Andy Reid scheming up ways to get those guys open, playing a man is kind of a scary proposition against the Chiefs. So I think maybe in like some third and medium, third and short situations, you might see man coverage, but I wouldn't imagine that it's going to be a big part of the game plan.
Yeah, and obviously, like, one guy that we always have to talk about in this matchup is Travis Kelce. I know that he hasn't been the same guy that we've seen over the years. Do you think he's still a threat, in this matchup for them, or does he become kind of like the third or even fourth option given the weapons they have in the receiving core?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rashee Rice will definitely take some of his targets away because when Rice was healthy last year, we saw him running some of those Kelce routes that we're used to seeing him run, like those choice route, those option route, those sales routes. Those were all Kelce routes. But Rice started running some of them. But I think Kelce's still an effective receiver because he knows how to find those holes in the zones. Mahomes still has a ton of trust in him. And if you try to match up a linebacker on him or even a nickelback, he's still a mismatch as we saw against Detroit. So he's not the same guy. that he was as far as being by far the number one tight end in the league, but he's still a top 10 tight end.
Yeah, no, I would agree on that for sure. Yeah, I'm curious to see how that transpires. You talk about matching up a linebacker against him in the locker room yesterday. Devin White said, in regards to that matchup, he said, I don't care, Devin White's going to win. Obviously, he has to go in and have the utmost confidence. That's saying a lot. How do you break down that matchup of how you think the Raiders try to match up with him? Because do they throw Devin White at him? Do you think they maybe go more looks where they try and get Jamal Adams in the mix against them? Like, how do you think they try and attack him in this game with the personnel they have on this year's team?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a ton of zones, so I don't think we're just going to see like a straight up man matchup against him. But I would imagine Jamal Adams would be a guy that they could try to match up on him. I think Devin White, if he's just playing man coverage, you can match him up on him. I wouldn't like him to kind of get matched up in Devin White in zone too often because he probably, he might get lost trying to cover Kelce because he's so unorthodox. But I also think Devin White's going to be used as a quarterback spy a lot against Patrick Mahomes because I feel like he is one of the better spies in the league. So I think we're going to see him play a little closer to the line of scrimmage as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like being able to spy Mahomes is obviously a big aspect of defending him. Where have you seen teams have success against him the most? Because obviously this has been a really solid year for him. I believe he's got the best QBR since 2012 for him at least, and has been really off the charts, especially in the last 3 games. But where have teams had the most success against him in recent memory here?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a stock answer because pressure is always the answer against any quarterback. But like the teams that we've seen been able to defend him have just overwhelmed their offensive line completely. Like the Eagles in the Super Bowl, we saw Tampa Bay do it in the Super Bowl. But Patrick Graham has actually historically had some pretty good game plans against Patrick Mahomes, even going back to his time with the Giants. But again, that was like a different type of Chiefs team where you could kind of just sit back in the zone and you just weren't really afraid of too many of the Chiefs receivers. So it'll be interesting to see what Patrick Graham comes up with this year against this version of the Chiefs and see if he has some different answers that might give them trouble. But right now, just looking at this Chiefs offense, I mean, it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to beat them in a defensive game like you would be able to do in a pass.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, they're catching them at a really bad time when they're humming, and then also, like we talked about, getting Rashee Rice back. It's just like, man, the NFL had to draw it up that way where he comes back against the Raiders. I know Raider Nation is not loving that one. Now, let's go flip it around to the other side of the ball for the Raiders offense. Obviously, they've seen their struggles, and we'll get to Geno Smith at some point here. But I'm curious, in the running game, like, do you think that is their path to even having a shot in this game, is being able to run the ball against this Chiefs defense that fared pretty well against the Lions team that likes to out-physical teams, and I thought that Chiefs defense really stood tall against them.
Yeah, they did. And I think, being able to run the ball against this defense is going to be key. What the Raiders running game struggles with is negative plays. And they kind of sorted that out in the previous 2 weeks before the Titans game, but we saw it. We saw that issue kind of pop up again against Tennessee. But I think what does bode well for the Raiders is the Chiefs' defensive line. They aren't like a bunch of gap shooters that try to get negative plays. They're more like 2-gappers that will hold the line of scrimmage and just kind of keep everything in front of them. So they'll give you some of those. Chris Jones will take a chance occasionally. He's a guy that will kind of gamble and go backdoor on you occasionally. But for the most part, this defensive line is not going to just try to get a bunch of negative plays. They're going to try to be sound. So if they could get some yardage or create some space for Ashton Genty, this is going to be a game that's just really going to be up to him to create those yards. When you get 1 or 2 yards into the line of scrimmage, can he turn those into 5-7 yard gains and really keep this offense efficient? I wouldn't expect too many explosive plays because this defense is really good at stopping explosive plays, but just make this offense efficient, get those 5-yard gains, and if you could turn them to 7-8 yard gains, even better. But I think that's going to be the key in this game, is just avoid those negative plays. This defense isn't trying to get those negative plays anyways, and keep that offense moving.
Yeah, I think overall the Chiefs defense, against the run, the total number has looked good efficiency wise. They're giving up, I believe, over 4.5 carries, per run, or 4.5 yards per carry, against running backs there. So there is going to be some room for sure. Do you think what we saw the Raiders offense against the Titans, and again, I know the Titans are not the Chiefs, but that possession type offense that was efficient, do you think that's a winning formula for them, and do you think that's something we'll actually see them stick to going forward?
I think so. I think it does. The Titans play a lot of soft coverage, so they're giving up a lot of quick throws underneath, and it helped the Raiders out because obviously we know they struggle to block, pass block, to let those longer routes develop. And the Chiefs are playing more cover two zone than they usually do under Steve Spagnuolo. I think after the week one when they really got burned against the Chargers, they decided they're going to play a little bit more zone and sit back a little bit. But they're still an aggressive team that play match coverage. So it's not going to be as easy like it was against the Titans to just keep taking those underneath gains and hit those curl routes and that kind of thing. You're going to have to take some chances eventually, and you're going to have to try to beat them deep and get over the top. I mean, Trey Tucker does have the ability to beat some of these corners deep, I believe. So, you have to find ways to quick throws against that kind of tight coverage, whether it's pick routes or rub routes or those sorts of things, and combinations that are good against match coverage. And Chip Kelly is from that college world where he saw a lot of match coverages. So hopefully he comes in with a good game plan to kind of create quick throws against this type of defense. But it's just not going to be as easy as it was against the Titans that just gave you a bunch of space underneath.
Yeah, no, exactly. And obviously, Geno Smith has been a big talking point, when we dive into the Raiders each and every week. We know the turnover numbers have been off the charts. He does throw the one against the Titans, but for the most part, played a very efficient game, over 70% completion percentage, if I remember right. There's no, obviously, Geno Smith defense that we've seen. We've seen him struggle against a bunch of different looks. But how do you think he fares in this matchup, and what's going to be key for him to make sure he just doesn't turn the ball over? I know he likes to throw into some of those tight windows.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because the Raiders just without Brock Bowers, they don't have a ton of talent on their receiving core, so those windows are tighter, and he doesn't like being a check down Charlie. He wants to take those chances, but then these chances are into windows that are so small right now. The margin of error is just tiny for him. So, I mean, I think he had adjusted his game, like we saw that against the Tennessee Titans, but even that pick he threw, it really wasn't a bad pick. He was getting hit while he was throwing the ball to an open receiver. So I know it probably is against his nature, but I think, avoiding turnovers, but also learning when to take those chances, because you can't be totally conservative and beat the Chiefs. I mean, you're going to have to take some chances to beat this
Yeah.
Chiefs team. So, I mean, this could be a game where he throws, one or two interceptions. But like the thing is, like, you can't be conservative against the Chiefs and expect to win. Like, if you keep checking the ball down and you play, it just plays into their hands, and you have to be able to keep up with this offense. And maybe this offense doesn't have enough firepower at the moment to keep up with the Chiefs, but you just can't. You still have to take some chances downfield against this team.
Yeah, you definitely do. I mean, look, we know the game a couple years ago when Aiden, was out there and doesn't complete a pass for so long, and then you're just putting so much on your defense. And obviously, they go and have the picks that they return for a touchdown there with Jack Jones back then. But then also even going back a little further when they had Ruggs, they were able to really beat them in that explosive passing attack. So that is something you need to be able to generate against this team. Otherwise, it's a losing battle, and you're just asking so much from a defense against Mahomes. So, like, I totally agree there. I'm curious here now. I hate asking you for the predictions, but we got to get to this one, man. Like, what happens, on Sunday out there in KC, and why do you feel that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Raiders just are catching the Chiefs at the wrong moment right now. Like, the Raiders have a lot of injury issues. The Chiefs are actually one of the healthiest teams in the league right now, and they're getting Rashee Rice back. So I just think it's too much to overcome in Arrowhead. I have the Chiefs winning 31-14. I think the Raiders will have a better chance if they get Colton Miller and Brock Bowers back in the second matchup against the Chiefs. But it's just too much to overcome for this team at this moment right now.
Yeah, no, I'd agree 100%. This is like you said, you're just running into a buzzsaw at the worst time possible. Maybe had the Raiders caught him earlier in the season when they were still kind of figuring things out, didn't have their full arsenal back. This is going to be a tough matchup for them. Ted, obviously, we appreciate your time each and every time. We'll try and get you on here again in the future as well. But before we get to that, please tell us what you guys have going on. Obviously, you and Marshall have a great podcast going, so tell the folks where they can find it and what you guys got cooking.
Yeah, I have my own podcast, the Just Win podcast. You can find that on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Yeah, and I used to host it with Vic Tafer and Tashawn Reed, but they've left to different teams. So,
Yeah.
but I'm ecstatic to get Marshall Newhouse, who is a former NFL player, played for the Raiders, just to bounce X's and O ideas off of, and it's been a blast talking with Marshall. Just check that out if you get a chance.
Yeah, definitely. The two of you guys on that podcast together is gold. Obviously, you're a great football mind, and him having the fact that he played, you can't beat it. So definitely check that out, Raider Nation, if you haven't already. Again, Ted, thanks for the time. We really appreciate it, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
All right, hey, good stuff. Ted is always awesome. I love his show. Make sure you guys go check it out. Marshall is also a great addition to their show as well. The Raider Nation, community, the content creators, all of us really do a great job, and Ted and them are obviously, as you guys can tell, one of the best in the business at doing it as well. So I'm really glad that they jumped on the show. I cannot wait to work with him further. In the meantime, though, guys, let's see if we can make you some money for another round of Raiders Rounders with our homie Matt Perrault. All right, Matt, we're back for week 7 of Raiders Rounders. As we always do before we dive into the current week, let's take a look back at the week that was. The Raiders obviously snapped the skid, beat the Titans, thank God, because if not, the world would be, I don't want to know what would happen in that one. So how do you wrap your head around what happened there in that game against the Titans?
I mean, I think it went pretty much how I thought it was going to go. I mean, the Titans are not a good football team, and Geno, although he did throw a pick again, played well enough, and Ashton Jeanty was the best player on the field for the Raiders, and he has to be every week. He was effective. He scored another touchdown, which, again, you can just keep on betting Ashton Jeanty anytime touchdown every week. He is their offense. Until Brock Bowers comes back, he is their most effective weapon on the football field. So, I think if you are a Raider fan, you would have been really disheartened if your team had lost to the Titans. And yeah. I guess you could see what the league thinks of the Raiders, because Brian Callahan was fired in the wake of the loss to the Raiders, before the Patriots show up with Mike Vrabel, which is also pretty interesting. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But I think if I'm a Raider fan, that's a game that you had to win. And so it gives you a chance to kind of exhale a little bit and go, okay, we beat the Titans. Now let's build upon that. It's Chief Week.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for the first time this season, you can point to okay, this could be the recipe for the Raiders going forward, both offensively and defensively, what they showed. Obviously, not every team in the league is the Titans, and this week they're playing a team that is firing on all cylinders and just happens to be a team that's also trying to make each other 4th straight Super Bowl and is now rolling. So how do you wrap your head around this matchup with the Chiefs? And full disclosure for everybody listening, we're taping this early because I am out of town, so it's Tuesday as we tape this. This will be coming out on Friday, so some numbers can change.
Yeah, I think if it gets to 14, I would take the Raiders. I think just a divisional dog in this type of situation. I know everyone's talking about the fact that Rashee Rice is coming back, and you have Worthy and Rice, and Mahomes' numbers with Worthy on the field has been dramatically different, and now you're going to have 2 weapons to go after the Raider defense with. But Max Crosby plays really well against the Chiefs. He really gets up for this matchup, and he had just a destructive game last week. We've seen the Raiders walk into Arrowhead and win the game recently. I don't think they do that here, but I think we're just kind of overselling the Chiefs a little bit here. It's the NFL. If I get 14 points in a divisional game, I'm going to take the Raiders. Now, I don't know if it gets that high. We're at 12.5 at the time of taping here on Tuesday. We're at 12.5. That is an insane number. The professionals are going to lurk. And I think if we get to 13, that's when they might pounce. It might be 13.5, or it might be 14 before the pros come in. But the professionals love points. There's a reason for it. Look on Monday night what happened with the Bears, right? Look what happened with the Falcons. Points in the NFL is a significant thing when you're gambling. But you're talking about a divisional dog. I don't care if you're at Arrowhead. I don't care if you're playing on the moon. 14 points is 14 points. So let's see how high this thing winds up getting. And if it does get to 14, I think you jump on the Raiders. If it comes down and it goes to 10, then I'd be more inclined to bet the Chiefs. So I think the line movement will tell me where I'm going to go with this. Every money line parlay, every survivor pool, this is going to be the pick of the day for most people in the NFL from a money line perspective for the Chiefs to win. The Raiders have a bye week next week. But teams, generally speaking, when teams play the week before the bye, they know they can empty the tank a bit. They know they can stress a little bit. They can push a little bit because they know they have rest coming. That equally puts me on the side of the Raiders as long as we get that point total up around 13 or 14 points.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of does move throughout the week. And I'm just looking back at the last handful of scores over the years for them. Again, that number right now at 12.5. You have to go back to November 26th of 2023 for the last time it was a double-digit win for the Chiefs. They won 31-17 in Vegas here. Other than that, it's been 2014, Raiders winning on Christmas of 2 years ago, and then 7-point game, 2-point game. So, I mean, they've been really tight contests. Like you said, the Raiders just always happen to play the Chiefs real tough. And they've had some pretty bad teams over the years. And I think this is a better team, even though the record doesn't show it, than we've seen in recent years for the Raiders.
I think that 31-17 game, if my memory serves me correctly, that was a late score by the Chiefs that put them up by that margin. Like that, I don't think that game was as lopsided as the final score wound up being.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we're betting the final score, so it doesn't matter when they score. It matters what the final score is. But I think just generally speaking in the NFL, we saw, each week when you go into divisional matchups, it's one of the things that you start scanning the board. Okay, who's playing a divisional opponent and who is playing a divisional opponent on the road versus home? What are the numbers? It's always going to be tighter than what I think the public thinks. They underestimate the familiarity standpoint when two teams play each other. And look at the Raiders. If you beat the Chiefs here and head off into a bye week after beating the Chiefs, it's a huge bounce for them. It's a huge, boost to the season if you're able to do that. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. But I just think that's too many points.
No, I agree too. So we'll see how it goes. These games are always interesting. Like you said, divisional rivalry, anything can kind of happen. Let's now dive into the weekend slate of games. We got another international one coming up. We got the Rams and the Jags. Right now, the Rams are favored by 2.5.
Yeah, look at this Rams team with Sean McVay. It's remarkable. Now, I guess you got to figure out, is this a road game or is this a neutral site game? Because the numbers for Sean McVay are pretty remarkable. When he won last week as a 4-point favorite. If this thing gets to 4 or higher for the Rams up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, as a straight up gambler, straight up bet, the Rams don't lose. They're now 16-0-1 straight up when they're on the road as a 4-point favorite or higher. So they play well away from home. And McVay, when he's expected to play well away from home, they normally do. I just don't really think this Jaguar team is nearly as good as people think. And I'm wearing the Jags hat for the heck of it. But I don't think the Jags, at 4-1, I didn't buy them last week. I don't buy them this week. I think you can take it early. Lay the 3 with the Rams. I know Puka Nacua is not playing, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, no Puka Nacua. They still have Devontae Adams. Hi, Raider fans. You know what that guy's capable of doing, okay?
Yeah.
They have tight ends. They have their running game still, and they have a defense that I think is going to create problems for this Jacksonville Jaguars offense, and I think they get after Trevor Lawrence. I think 3 is a pretty tasty number there. I'll take the Rams. It's another early morning for us here on the West Coast to go ahead and watch games in London, but I'll lay the 3 with the Rams.
Yeah, you always love those early morning games. It's a great way to wake up. It's like college game day on Sunday. With that, man, the Mike Vrabel revenge game head to Tennessee is in a 7.5-point favorite. Like you said, they fired their coach before this one. Kind of weird.
Yeah, find the 7 because I think that matters here. 7.5s, I tend to go a little bit on the side, but 7 I like from a Patriot perspective. Look at, there is a thing called a dead cat bounce. Okay, dead cat bounce is a gambling term for teams that fire their head coach the following week. They tend to play really well because there is that shake up in the locker room of, oh my God, my job, because you don't know who's coming in and you got to put it on film because the next guy could say, I don't like you, I don't like you, I don't like you, and you're out of a job. So I do think that factors in a touch here, but Vrabel got fired so horrifically in that market. The fans did not want him fired. The team didn't want him fired. Only the upper brass wanted him fired. He got to sit for a year and be a consultant for the Browns and then got the Patriot job after Gerard Mayo went disaster. The Patriots won 4 games in the last season of Belichick, 4 games in the first season of Gerard Mayo, the only season, thank goodness. 4-2 now for the Patriots, and they're tied for first place now ahead of the Bills after the loss on Monday night. Pats have the tiebreaker. So they're in first place in the AFC East here after week 6. I think this team goes in there focused. I think Drake May is playing at an elite level. He's in the top 10 for MVP betting at the moment, which is like, oh my. He is leading the NFL in QBR on passes of 20 yards of air or more. And the Titans defense is not very good. We saw it last week here with the Raiders. I think you lay the 7. Patriots win the game and cover.
Yeah, definitely. And you're getting short on time here, so we'll kind of go rapid fire through these next two that we want to get to. Giants and Broncos. Do you believe in Jackson Dart?
No, and I haven't believed in Jackson Dart. Even at home, I haven't believed him. But on the road, I really don't believe in Jackson Dart. I think this is just a game where everyone, again, is so high on this Giants football team. It's Jackson Dart. It's Scatterboo. They're on the road. Different place to play when you're on the road here. And I know folks are going to be all over the Giants because of what happened last week. Denver is a hard place to play, and Denver needs a get-right game. This is a get-right game for the Broncos. I'll lay the 7.
All right, Commanders at Cowboys. 1.5 is the spread on this one. What are we thinking?
Over. The only thing to do in this game is bet the over. And almost in every game when it comes to the Cowboys, bet the over. 54.5, it's climbing. The Cowboys defense can't stop anybody. They gave up 30 points to the Panthers. They scored 27 points. The Cowboys are good for 24 to 28 points themselves every week. Their offense is elite. Their defense is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the NFL. And you got to like the offense on the other side with Jaden Daniels. And he's got to be ferociously mad about fumbling away the game on Monday night because the ball was in his hands and he gave it back to the Bears. They go down and kick a field goal and they lose the game. So I think Daniels plays well. They might be getting some of their receivers back for this game. We'll see how the injury report looks for the Commanders, but I like the over in this game, 54.5.
Yeah, that one feels like a lock. All right, Matt, on the way out, tell the people where they can find your stuff.
Best place at Sports Talk Matt is my Twitter account. That's where I post all links to everything that I do. But the Daily Juice podcast every single day, 365, and the Bostonian versus the Book, BVB as we call it, 1 o'clock Eastern on YouTube, Monday through Friday.
All right, Matt, you're the man. Take it easy. We'll see you next week.
Hey, Matt always brings the heat, guys. Obviously, we recorded that segment before we left town there on Tuesday in the Silver and Black Sports Network studios. And again, in the meantime, as we close this out, doing the show remotely here, it's time for my pick. As you guys can gather, I talked about it with many folks, both on this show and also in our previous show on Wednesday. I got to lean Chiefs in this one. Last check, they were favored by double digits, and I think that they go on and win by double digits. I hate to say it, but the Raiders are really catching them at a tough time. They are clicking on all cylinders, like we said with Ted today. And look, Patrick Mahomes is playing at an otherworldly level like we saw him back in 2022, and now he's got his full arsenal of weapons back as Rashee Rice returns into things. I just think it's going to be too much for the Raiders back end to really handle. We've seen them struggle in coverage, and I think Mahomes and company are going to be able to get the job done and be able to kind of rip the defense apart. So I do think they win by double digits. I'm kind of on track with most of the people that are saying that, but we have seen it over the years that the Raiders somehow find a way to keep it close. If they're going to do that in this game, obviously Max Crosby and that defensive front has to be massive. We saw him do it against the Titans. The Titans are obviously not the same as the Chiefs, but if they have any shot in this game, that defensive front is going to have to show up early and often. Patrick Graham is going to have to call a great game plan, and we're going to need to see a really good effort from the guys on the back end. Isaiah Paul-Malu, who we've seen getting caught at times biting up. Caillou Blue-Kelly needs to build off of a big week last week against the Titans, because let's be real, like the Chiefs are not the Titans. So if he can build off of that, that'll be massive. If not, we're probably going to see Darian Porter out there, and we'll see what the youngin can do against a really explosive Chiefs offense. And then on the other end, Eric Stokes, he's been solid most of the year, but this is a different type of matchup here, and he's going to be tasked with doing a whole lot. So we'll see if he can step up as well. But like I said, I got to lean Chiefs in this matchup. I just think that they are firing on all cylinders, specifically offensively. And then you look what they did on defense in that game against the Lions, and they really brought it to them. That's one of the better teams in the league. So I think Spags and company will be ready to roll against this team. And Gino probably throws a couple picks, which is really frustrating for Raiders fans, but we've seen it too many times this year. So unless that really efficient offense can get going, and maybe they can hit a couple balls over the top like we've seen in years past, I just don't think the offense will be able to score enough points to keep up with this Chiefs team. So like I said, I got to take Patrick Mahomes and company in this one. And then the Raiders head into the bye week coming off of a loss, but maybe with some things to build off of, hopefully start to get healthier. Brock returns, and then we'll see what happens after the bye week. Anything can happen. It is a long season. There's still plenty of football left to be played. Obviously, I know it's been an underwhelming start for the Raiders, but still, just a lot of work to get going. They really have to be able to establish their identity. We saw pieces of that against the Titans. Are they going to be that efficient offense that kind of dinks and dunks their way down the field and leans on Ashton Genty? Pete said he wants to see Ashton right around that 20-carry mark. Is that something they can do consistently and will they stick with it? I think they're going to need to in order to be successful going forward. We'll see how it all shakes up on Sunday. Make sure you guys do tune in on Sunday for our post-game reaction show. As soon as that game goes final, we will be back in town and back in this Silver and Black Sports Network studio shooting that one. Also, guys, in the meantime, if you want more, check out our newsletter that dropped this morning as well at 6 a.m. To do that, go to silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and subscribe to our free newsletter that, again, drops on Mondays and Fridays. It's always chock full of the biggest storylines from the week that was for the Raiders and takes a look at the matchups and kind of what you need to watch out for leading into Sunday. And then on Monday, we break down the game and dive into our biggest takeaways from what went down on Sunday, wherever the Raiders happen to be playing. So, as always, guys, we appreciate you watching and listening. Keep those comments coming. You guys have been great. We're continuing to try and grow this brand and make it one of the better Raider podcasts out there. And so far, you guys have been solid in that regard. The comments are awesome, and I love the interactions. And make sure you check us out on all of our other socials as well. Search us out there. Find me on Twitter at JesseSBSN, and also at Silver and Black Sports Network on Instagram. And obviously, you guys know it on YouTube if you're watching here, or if you're listening to the podcast as well. Make sure you check out our other social channels too. Again, we appreciate the support, guys, and we will see you on Sunday after the game against the Chiefs. Take it easy.